guy with the plan, the man with the plan, Brent Johnson, and I think he has the clearest vision of the future. So I want you to pay attention. I don't care where you live in the world, because I think Brent has as clear a vision of the future as possible.
What I think is going to happen over the next few years is that the world, after the financial crisis, the central banks just got together and just printed all this liquidity. And that went on for 6 or 7 years, 5 or 6 years. And in 2000, at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, the US stopped mixing the milkshake, and we started raising interest rates. And the raising of the interest rates from 2016 to 2019 combined with a number of other factors. It's not just interest rates, but interest rates were a big factor. And the fact that our interest rates, while they've come down a lot, are still higher than Japan and Europe, who have negative rates. That, along with these other factors of having the global reserve currency system, having the dollar payment system, having the largest US military, having the deepest capital markets, all of that stuff acts as a straw which sucks up all the liquidity that the world is printing.
If they're printing so many dollars, why doesn't gold why don't people just rush to gold?
Right.
And I think that's the question you were asking, it's a question I'm asking myself. Those gold bug guys are asking themselves also, is if there's so many fiat or I call it fake dollars, why doesn't gold go through the roof? Right?
Yeah.
So
well,
why
and
isn't it?
Again, I think it depends on where you're at and what currency you're denominated in. Like gold in Argentino pesos looks really good right now. Right. Gold in Turkish lira looks really good. Gold in just about every currency other than the dollar is at its all-time high, and it's getting pretty close to itself in the dollar as being the all-time high as well. Still a couple $100 away. But in many ways, people think of the gold and the dollar as enemies or the antithesis of each other. I do think that we'll get into a period where they rise together, but I think ultimately gold will win the battle. The reason is because I think gold is the market's money. If we just had free markets and there was no government influence and central banks and legal tender laws, then I think the market would choose gold as money. But we don't live in a free market. We may want to, but we don't. And because of the governments of the world, and not just US, don't want a gold standard because they like to be able to spend more than they earn. Politicians get elected by making promises. And so I don't think the governments of the world want to go back to a gold standard. I think the market might force it on them, but they will fight it. And in that fight, I think that's where gold gets kind of tampered down from time to time. At the end of the day, whether you like the dollar or whether you hate the dollar, whether you think it's a good currency or a horrible currency, the fact of the matter is it is the currency which the world runs on. And so even if you hate the dollar, if you live in Argentina or Turkey or China or Brazil or France, you still need dollars to operate on the world stage. Now, I think there's a lot of people who would like to change that, but as of right now, they haven't. And I don't. And I think the efforts that they have made to do so are too little, too late. And that's kind of what's setting up this whole dollar milkshake theory. The whole COVID virus has caused global trade, global travel, global movement to stop. And that means the same for the velocity of money. So, there's never enough money in the system to pay all the debt. So money has to circulate at a certain level of speed in order to service all the debts that are out there. When money velocity falls, money doesn't circulate, people miss their payments, defaults happen, and you get a contraction. That's a credit contraction. And so what the central banks do is they pump liquidity in to try to counteract that lack of velocity. And so what I think this COVID and the lack of the flow of money is making the global economy come in under even more pressure than it was before. It makes it even harder to get those dollars to service that dollar debt. And so I think it's kind of accelerating the downside of the milkshake. But here's the flip side, is they're going to print all these dollars and all this currency, right? And so when the COVID does leave and money is start to flow again, now you've got a lot more money out there and now it's flowing. So that's a recipe for inflation. But first you get the deflation, you print all the money, and then when the money starts to move, you get high levels of inflation because there's so much liquidity now. So again, I don't think we're there yet, but that's what's setting up. So I think we have deflation, for the next year, 18 months, and then we have inflation after that as capital starts to circulate again.
And how does Bitcoin play into all this?
Bitcoin's an interesting one. I own Bitcoin. I think if you have the ability and you have some space in your portfolio for speculation, you should own some Bitcoin. I don't think it replaces gold. I think it's in addition to gold. It's a very asymmetric play. I think it probably either goes to $1,000, which is be down 80%, or it goes to 100,000 or $1 million, and that so it's either all or nothing kind of a thing.